Our story begins in 1974. Tony and Teresa are a young couple from Dublin. They have been living in London for some time and are eagerly awaiting the birth of their first baby. She arrives bang on schedule at 2 p.m. on Monday the 25th of November, and everyone who meets her instantly proclaims her the most adorable creature they have ever seen. In early 1975, our little family moved back to Dublin, and so began my lifelong enthusiasm for all things Irish. I will be forever grateful that we did move home to Dublin, but I wish it had been for a happier reason. You see, my granddad James was very sick, so my mum needed to be with him. Sadly, he passed away on the 29th of March. He only got to meet two of his grandchildren, me and my cousin Fiona. But he has been a strong presence in all of our lives. I was only 4 months old when he died, but I've always felt him watching over me. Liam's middle name is James in his honour. After my granddad died, my parents decided that we'd stay in Dublin. We moved into a flat in a place called Ballymun. Ballymun was a series of high-rise flats built in the 1960s. It soon became known as a less than salubrious area, rife with high unemployment, crime, and really stinky lifts. My memories of Ballymun, few though they are all good. I remember playing on my little wooden swing, which hung in the door between the kitchen and the living room, playing with my little toy piano, and visiting my nana and granddad who lived nearby. After a couple of years in our flat, we moved to a house in a part of Dublin called Corduff in Blanchardstown. 19 Sheephill Green was our new address. The house seemed so big. It had an upstairs, 3 bedrooms, and a backyard. We lived in this house for almost 12 years, the longest I've ever lived in any house. Even now, most of my dreams take place in Sheephill Green, even the dreams in which I'm an adult. Amazing how much a place can embed itself in your psyche. When I was 4, I started school at St. Patrick's National School in Corduff. It doesn't get much more Irish than that, right? I remember toddling off to school, lugging my little brown suitcase, just like Paddington Bear's. It didn't hold much, but I loved that suitcase. I loved school too. I got to read, draw, paint and sing. I was such a teacher's pet, always the first to raise my hand and express an opinion. Big surprise, huh? About a year or so after I started school, a couple of really big, life-changing things happened. In 1980, my other granddad, Michael, passed away. It hit me really hard. I can still remember very clearly crying my eyes out when I realised that he wasn't coming back. I had been lucky enough to spend a lot of time with my granddad, probably more than most of my cousins. I spent almost every day at Nana and Granddad's house while Mum and Dad were at work. Granddad would come in from his job at the bakery and he'd take me to the pub, where he and his friends would drink their black milk, and I would have red lemonade and a Golly Bar ice cream. But my favourite memory of Grandad is sitting on the front step of his house with Robbie, the dog from across the street. We would share a packet of ginger nut biscuits. Robbie loved them. The other big event in our family proves that God never closes a door without opening a window. A few months after Grandad died, I became a big sister. Leslie arrived bang on her due date, just as I had. 2 babies born exactly on the day they were due might sound unlikely, but if you knew my mum, you'd realise it's not really that surprising. The woman is never late. Never! The rest of my junior primary school days passed in a whirl of books, Looney Tunes cartoons, which we got to watch in the school hall every Friday, and majorettes. I loved taking part in the parades and competitions. Our team even won the national championships 2 years in a row. I can still twirl a mean baton, and thanks to an unfortunate accident, my dentist is reaping the rewards too. As I got older, I remained the class know-it-all, always eager to share what I knew about a subject. I really loved history and was always keen to learn about how people had lived in the past. When I was in 3rd class, we learned about ancient Egypt. I drank it all in and went home bursting with stories about mummies and pharaohs and pyramids. My mum piped up and told me all about my great Aunt Fanny, the only Irish person ever to have been buried in a pyramid. As the story goes, poor old Aunt Fanny died sitting up in her armchair. She lived alone, so it was a while before she was discovered, by which time rigor mortis had set in. The undertakers were unable to straighten her out, so they'd had to make a special pyramid for her to be buried in. Well, I couldn't wait to get to school the next day. As soon as our history class started, my hand was up like a shot. "Teacher, teacher," I cried excitedly. "Wait till you hear about my great Aunt Fanny." I guess the biggest lesson I learned that day was to take everything my mother tells me with a large dose of salt. One of my favourite things about school was the choir. We sang at Mass every Sunday, and the highlight of the year was getting to stay up late to sing at midnight Mass on Christmas Eve. I loved walking home with my dad in the crisp night air, looking out for Santa's sleigh. Our choir also put on plays. Oklahoma, The Sound of Music, Jesus Christ Superstar. They were all in the mix. My year, Did Annie Get Your Gun? And even though I was only in the chorus, I still remember the words to all the songs. Our school also had a program that made it possible for some kids to take extra lessons in French and Irish. The reward for these extra lessons was an excursion to France and Germany. I also discovered the guitar thanks to my dad and my Uncle Gerard. And as a dyed-in-the-wool Dublin girl, I was legally required to worship U2. I was even in a band that played mostly U2 songs, with a spattering of Beatles thrown in. I'm still a massive fan, of course, even if Bono didn't choose me to dance with him. In 1988, the Republic of Ireland football team played in the European Championships, the very first major tournament it had ever qualified for. We beat England, drew with Russia, and were beaten by Holland with a goal that I still maintain was offside. When I was 14, everything changed. We said goodbye to Ireland and moved to Australia. Let's just say I was a little unhappy about this new arrangement. I was devastated to be leaving behind all of the places and people that I loved. At the time, I suppose I focused a little more on the friends than I did on the family. I guess because I assumed that family would always be there. I didn't realise at the time that when I said goodbye to my Nana Nolan, I would never see her again. If I had known, it would have made the leaving even harder. Of course, I didn't just say goodbye to one Nana that day in 1989. But luckily for my Aussie cousins and me, Nana Roach, Lily, came to live here too, along with our wonderful Auntie Nolene. They came the year after we did. We got to laugh, drink and sing with her for another 15 years before she left the world behind to be with her beloved James once more. So here I was in Melbourne, miserable and missing home, wanting to go home, thinking about home, talking about home, 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 home. At school, I was the Irish one. At first, I was a bit of a novelty. People would ask me to pronounce certain words. Puppy, 33, potato. But after a while, I just became the girl who talked about Ireland. In Ireland, we call them crisps, and they're much better. In Ireland, we call it football, not soccer. Oh, and Ireland's going to win the World Cup. It's amazing anyone wants to talk to me at all. But luckily, I found a few people who were willing to put up with me. In 1992, I was persuaded to go along to this thing called Antioch. It was a youth group run by the church. Now that sounds pretty daggy, and it was. But it was kind of cool too in its own way. Lots of hugging and singing and hugging and laughing and hugging and crying. Oh, and lots of hooking up. That's the thing you never hear about church groups. They're kind of like band camp, but without the flute. Anyway, I met a lot of great friends through Antioch. One in particular deserves special mention, I suppose. On that first weekend, I was persuaded to sing a song. Totally out of character for me, I know. So I'm singing All I Want Is You, which you'll no doubt hear at some stage tonight. And there's a handsome young man with a very serious hair parting in the audience. Now this young man is puzzled. That girl singing reminds him of someone, but he can't quite put his finger on who it is. Well, it took a couple of years, but Roger finally made his move. You can't rush these things, you know. Most of our early years together revolved around Roger's minis. Actually, several minis. At one stage, he had 3 minis and a Morris 1100 on the go. So we drove off into the sunset, indulging our mutual enthusiasm for the Beatles, mid-90s TV, and fine dining. We also spent a lot of time not going to uni classes and leaving all of our studying until the last minute. When we'd be going out for about a year, we took one of those minis for a bit of a drive to Queensland. We drove for 2 full days with the car loaded up like a pack horse. There was a tent, a camp stove, table and chairs, you name it, we brought it. We had a few days of glorious Gold Coast sunshine. And then the rains came. A lot of rain. So much rain that we almost drowned inside the tent. Honestly, it collapsed in the middle of the night and was so heavy with water that we really struggled to crawl out of it. Everyone told us that if our relationship could survive such a disastrous holiday, it could survive anything. A few more years passed, and Roger decided that he liked it, so he put a ring on it. After our wedding, time seemed to speed up. We were real grown-ups now. I graduated from uni and started working as an editor. We bought our first house on Bolton Street in Eltham, and we went to Europe. It was wonderful being back in Ireland again, 13 years after I left. It was strange to see how many things had changed and how many things were exactly the same. It was great to show Roger where I'd come from, and really funny hearing him attempt the Dublin accent. Say it with me, Roger. Keep them 2 wheels on the road, right? So, travelling done, what else was there left for us to do but start a family? We had a terribly sad loss early on, which was harder than I ever imagined it could be. But soon enough, our family began to grow. And grow. And just when we thought we were all done, surprise! And so now we find ourselves with 4 wonderful, if somewhat exhausting, children. Kira, Ryan, Connor and Liam are the centre of our little universe. Sometimes it's hard to imagine what our lives were like before them. What did we do? How did we fill our time? We actually used to think we were busy back then. Ha! So here I am at 40. As you've probably guessed by now, I'm feeling a little bit nostalgic. I've been thinking lately about all the different stages of my life so far. I found myself wondering, if it were possible for me to travel back in time, what would I say to my younger self? What advice would I give her? So, if you'll indulge me just a little longer, to this Trini I'd probably say, slow down, breathe. Try to take in as much as you can, because life is about to speed up. Oh yes, and sleep. Get as much as you can while you still can. To this Trini, I'd say, be brave. Don't be afraid to try new things or make mistakes. Other people aren't paying nearly as much attention to you as you think they are, so stop worrying what they think. And for God's sake, get your driver's license. To this Katrina, I'd say, hang in there. Soon someone's going to come along who's going to give you everything you could ever ask for and more. And he's never going to miss an opportunity to remind you of that. This one's easy. I'd tell her, have faith, you'll feel at home again before too long. And I'd probably give her a hair straightener. This is not so easy. I think I'd tell this Katrina to cherish all the time you have left with your family and friends in Ireland. Make as many memories as possible and write them down, because these memories will help you through some tough times. And precious as they are, they'll fade to a point where you'll wonder how real they actually are. You know what? I don't think I'd have much advice for this version of myself. I think she's pretty awesome, if a little gullible. I think I'd ask her to share some of her confidence with the 40-year-old me. I'd just tell this little Trini to keep on swinging, keep playing that toy piano. But I'd probably tell her parents to take some more photographs so she won't have to draw them herself in 39 years' time. Actually, I think I would tell her something else. I'd tell her that one day, in the distant future, she'll be standing in a backyard under a blanket of fairy lights. She'll be surrounded by the people she loves most in the world, wanting to tell them how much they mean to her, but unable to express it. She'll want to thank them for all the love and support they've given her over the years, but will find all the usual words clumsy and hollow sounding. So instead, she'll raise a glass and offer a toast. a toast to the years we've shared, whether it be 40 or 21 or 1.5. To the joy, the laughter and the love that we've enjoyed. To the tears, the grief and heartbreaks that we've endured. And to the hope that we will share, enjoy and endure many more years together. And what the heck, she'll also toast herself because she's feckin' fabulous.